Okay, in our next interview of Ask an Archer, we're very happy and honored to have Thomas Duvernay, who is a specialist in Korean archery and certainly has an interest in Far Eastern archery as well. He currently resides in Korea. He's a professor at the university. So Thomas, thank you for giving us your time.
Well, thank you for having me.
Excellent. So we do have quite a lot to get through. I know you have a number of items and artifacts and things that we want to go through as well, but a number of people have sent in questions that they've been kind of yearning to ask you as well. Just to start off, what led you into the interest of Korean archery specifically, or Far Eastern archery?
Well, actually, I kind of stumbled into it, you might say. You see, I actually first shot a bow when I was, I don't know, around 7 or 8 years old.
Right.
At a summer camp back in the States.
Yeah.
Like many kids. That's how many kids I think have hit.
Where are you from originally in the States?
Originally, I'm from the state of Michigan in the United States.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, I first got into that, and then I came here to Korea in 1984.
Right.
Got married then. My wife's Korean.
Right.
And then we went back to the States. Our son was born in the States. I was teaching college back there in my home state of Michigan back in the 80s. And when we came back to Korea in '89, we had our son with us at that time. He was a couple of years old at that time. And then a few years after that, when he was around 6 years old, I wanted to be able to do something with him.
Right.
Father-son type
quality
thing.
Time. Yeah, sure.
Right. And I was thinking about how much I enjoyed doing archery when I was a kid. And I still, once in a while over the years, I picked up a bow, just to keep my hand at it. Never anything serious. And so anyway, I wanted to see whether or not I could maybe find a place where my son and I could practice. I bought us both a couple of bows, a couple of, they were takedown recurves.
Okay. Yeah.
And I just wanted to see if there's some place around here that we in Korea that we could do that. I said, well, gee, Korea, big country with Olympic archery and everything.
Right.
There must be all kinds of places around here
all over
to
the
do
place.
it.
Yeah.
And I found out it was a desert. There was nothing.
Really.
And at that, I was teaching university in my wife's hometown here in Korea at that time. And I asked my assistant, I was actually kind of complaining to him, gee, there's no place around here to practice archery. And he said to me, he says, have you ever thought of Korean traditional archery? I said, no, what is it?
Okay.
Now, this was about almost 30 years ago.
Right.
27 years ago, maybe. So anyway, he said, there's a club just about a 5-minute drive from the university. So we hopped in my car. We drove over to the place. We were watching these Koreans shoot at a very far distant target.
Yeah.
And actually, I was already hooked just watching it.
Right.
And very shortly after that, I was signed up and
excellent.
Ready to go. And then I just got more and more and more into it after that. And the rest, they say, is history.
There you go. Excellent. So since that time, you not just had a passion for it, but then you started to research into it quite deeply and look into things like, the thumbrings and the bow making and all that type of stuff, right? And that led you to also meet a number of important people in the Korean traditional archery world.
Oh yeah. Well, like with most traditional archery traditions, cultures around the world, we're actually a very small group.
Right. True.
Even around the world, we're really not that big of a group. And so everybody tends to know everybody.
Correct.
No matter how important you get in the traditional archery world, you're still just one of the guys.
Sure.
And there are always going to be times where you're going to be running into people in this affliction that we have.
Absolutely.
Well, actually, though, I would say the one big breakout point for meeting people in other traditional archery traditions, was in 1996. And that was when Jaap Koperdreyer, when he contacted me and he asked if I'd be interested in coming on out to the Eastern Traditional Archery Rendezvous, the ETAR.
He mentioned
North Central Pennsylvania. And I thought, well, sounds interesting. So, and at that time I took my son with me. We drove there, and that was when that was the first time that I really got to know a lot of the people who were doing other types of Eastern archery and such. And so that was really kind of where I really got to meet people. I had been doing a lot of research and such for a couple of years before that, which is where I guess my name kind of started to get out there.
Sure.
But I mean, when you think about that, mid-90s, internet was just kind of in its infancy around.
Absolutely, yeah, it wasn't what it is today. Sure.
No, but however, it was just enough that we were able to look each other up, and well, the people, the other people like Jaap and Lucas Novotny and some of the others, we became fast friends, really quickly. Jaap's wife Kay, and such,
lovely couple.
Yeah, we just all really just hit it off, and it just became a regular thing, and we became fast friends.
Yeah, you kept it up from there. What research have you done into, because the Far Eastern tradition, archery traditions are much more older than what we have in the West, or even in Europe possibly. How far back does Korean archery span?
Well, the use of the bow on the Korean Peninsula, that probably goes back some millennia. And the recorded use of bows goes back maybe, could be up to a couple thousand years.
Right.
And the reason why we know that is because, there are a lot of wall paintings and such that date back to that. Of course, material-wise, we don't have a lot, because bows and arrows, for most parts of them, very not very durable at all. You find arrowheads and such like that, but but bows and arrows and such themselves, not so much. So we have a lot of whatever written records there might be, but especially pictorial records that go kind of back that far.
Sure. The Far Eastern traditions, they have a much more stronger element of a master-student relationship and keeping this chain. Are there still kind of masters of Korean archery, or even bow making or arrow making today in Korea, that maintain that craftsmanship?
Oh yeah. I mean, there are still a few. They're dwindling in numbers. There's still maybe about a dozen bowyers who can tie themselves back generations, because each bowyer would be trained by a master who was trained by a master going way back.
Sure.
With the exception of a few years during World War II, Korea's archery tradition was really uninterrupted for centuries.
Amazing, yeah.
And so it really kind of goes back. One of my very oldest archery friends here in Korea was, and I have to say was, a Korean bowyer.
Okay.
But he had a he had a brain aneurysm back
Oh,
18 years ago, and so he's paralyzed on one side. And so needless to say, he had to give up bowmaking and such. But he was he was a very talented bowyer, and and just he learned from his master bowyer, who learned from his. As a matter of fact, I can show you one thing.
Yes. Why don't you bring out your first thing? Aha.
Now, see if I can fit this all in the.
Okay. Yeah.
This actually was a reproduction bow that he made. And it's in Korean. It's called a mokgun, which literally means a wood bow.
Right.
And I mean it actually the sia is wood.
Yeah.
He actually made the sia out of an old saw.
Oh.
He took the wood from an old saw and that made these from. It also, now the funny thing about this is the belly is actually bamboo.
Right.
So it had bamboo belly. It had some other natural laminations on it, and the bark backing here.
Would this be used by an adult or a child? Because I mean, the limbs are quite short there.
Yeah, well, it was for an adult, but actually there were some people who, when they looked at the original, which is at one of Korea's museums, I forget which museum. Yeah. Some of them actually were surmising it might have been a crossbow prod. So hard to actually say.
Okay.
But he made a couple of these, and the first one he made actually won a craftsmanship award here in Korea.
Excellent.
But this was one of the things he made. I mean, he was very talented. He even made this arrow case for me.
Beautiful, beautiful.
It was just his gift to me, just because I was such a good friend.
Excellent.
So he was actually multi-talented.
Excellent.
And I'm spilling things all over. But anyway.
How long would it roughly take? I mean, obviously, like with any apprenticeship or vocation, it could take a lifetime. But generally, for a student to really get to kind of a master level, do you have any idea how long? Or I guess that would depend on the student as well.
Well, yeah, it kind of depends on the student and the master. But I do know that I think he started when he was fairly young. I remember that, and it seems like he might have been doing it for 20 years.
Right.
He actually might have been apprenticing for that long, very possibly. Yeah. But I'll tell you, his master did a good job, because when I used to go into his shop and watch him work, he made it look so easy. It was one of those things, when you watched it, it was like you felt like you could get down and, gee, I can do that.
Do it yourself, yeah.
It's like, no, I can't do that. But and that was one of the things, because back in 1995, and this is pretty much what probably got the attention of some of the outside people, was I made 2 videos. One was on crafting the Korean hornbow, and one on crafting the Korean bamboo arrows.
Yes.
And the subject of the hornbow video was my bowyer friend.
Okay.
So
right.
Anybody who watches that video can see just how easy he made it look.
Yeah, that's it's a sign of like a true teacher or master, is when they make something look so easy, but really it's quite difficult.
Yeah, and when you try to do it, you find that out very quickly.
Yeah, indeed. You said that the number of teachers or masters are dwindling. Is that because there is a decrease in interest in traditional archery, or is it something else?
Well, let me qualify that a little bit. Of the actual people who are trained by masters going on generations, probably about a dozen people.
Right.
There are other people who are learning it sometimes on their own or by other methods.
Yep.
And including people from around the world. I mean, I have seen some people from other countries who have crafted Korean-style horn bows that are fantastic. I mean, you would think that they were crafted by a Korean master.
Right.
So there's, I mean, we have a lot of talent here in the world.
Yeah.
Now here in Korea, as I said, maybe about a dozen, let's say classically trained bowyers.
Yeah, which is not a lot.
But you also have many who have gone into the laminated bow area.
Right.
And they're actually just as talented because even making a laminated bow takes a lot of work.
Sure.
Yeah. Especially one that is, you know, that's good quality and such like that. But yeah, I'd say a dozen classically trained, and then you have others who have learned one way or another. But but I would say the main reason for that is just that not too many people want to have traditional bow making as their profession because there's just really no money in it.
Yeah, yeah. You can't
I mean, sometimes the bows cost a lot of money, but then when you see how much effort goes into making them, you realize why people charge so much. Sure. You know, you're not gonna get if you get what you pay for.
Absolutely. Really. Yeah, absolutely. So in Korean archery, they traditionally shoot a very long distance. How far is that distance, and do you know why they particularly shoot? Is that just one discipline and they have other disciplines, or they always shoot that distance?
Well, the official distance is 145 meters.
Wow. Okay.
That's the official distance.
Right.
But however, it's really actually only been that way since around the 1960s. Back then, they had, or I should say before then, it was the standard distance was what was called 120 bow.
Right.
A bow was basically a long pace.
Okay. Right. I see.
And depending on which measurement of bow you were using, it might have been 140 meters, it might have been 150 meters, and somewhere in that range. But then around the 1960s, the Korean Archery Association, they decided to standardize it at 145 meters.
Right. Okay.
Now, it was until 1894, archery was an official military subject in Korea.
Okay.
It ended in 1894. That they had a big overhaul of the Korean governmental system and everything like that.
Yeah.
And archery was taken off the military list.
Right.
But before then, everything was military archery. And after that point, it became a civilian activity. But still, the actual activity itself was still based upon what was done militarily.
Yeah.
So the long distance probably comes from how far the soldiers would launch volleys against their enemies.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. So that would probably be the best guess as to where the 145 meters generally comes from.
Yeah.
Social distancing.
Target distancing.
Target distance.
When you started at that club, presumably they didn't start you off at 145 meters as a beginner. They start people close distance, blank bossing, things like that, and then you gradually, or is it only experienced archers that couldn't shoot that distance?
Well, nowadays the way that they do things is a little bit more standardized. When I first got into Korean traditional archery, again almost 30 years ago, I had my teacher, my master, who really was, he was a master archer. And very, very excellent guy. And he had his own way. Now, the funny thing was, because, you know, I had already been shooting Western style and such like that, and I was quite used to that. His first lesson to me was, he looked at me and he said, I know you know how to shoot a bow. Now, you need to forget everything you know.
Oh, man.
That was my first lesson.
That's the first lesson.
Okay. That was my first lesson. And then he said, you have to come in here as a complete beginner.
Wow.
And what that really meant was, I did not shoot a live arrow for weeks.
Ah, right.
I was
they put you on the bands or something, is it?
Well, actually, at first, it was just drawing a bow back and holding it.
Wow.
And then letting up on it. I would do that in front of them. They had a tall, full-size mirror that I could do that in front of, just to see what my form was like. And I did that for weeks. Watching other people go out and enjoy themselves shooting arrows, but I stood there and just drew bows back. And then,
you know, that does require obviously an element of patience from new people, because this is one of the issues in the West when we try to apply traditional teaching methods like that. You know, people, they just won't come back the next week, because if they know all they're going to be doing is drawing a bow and looking in a mirror, you know, they've come to shoot, they want to shoot an arrow. So, you know, that you have to get them onto shooting straight away, or not straight away, but quite quickly. And that's not always the best thing, because they haven't perfected their technique. But that's why I think that leads into why the Koreans as a whole are very strong traditionally, and in terms of the Olympics, that they have a very strong teaching base, would you say? Yeah,
well, and you're right. I mean, many modern people, they like instant gratification.
Right.
You know,
right.
It's like, I want to be an expert today.
Exactly.
And you know, it doesn't work that way. Thankfully, I took him up on what he said and said, okay, all right, I've just forgotten everything I ever knew about shooting a bow. Yeah. And I'm glad I did, because really, truly, shooting Korean style is very, very, very different from shooting Western style. About the only real thing that's the same is you have a bow and you have an arrow.
Right.
You know, that right after that point, things kind of go on. But actually, after drawing for a long time and that, then my teacher said to me, he says, okay, now you're ready to progress up to the next level. And the next level was shooting a tethered arrow.
Okay.
So an arrow that was attached to a line, and that line was attached to a bamboo pole, a very tall bamboo pole that flexed.
Okay, right.
And so you'd shoot that, and then it would return. It would do an arc, and and if you did it right, it came in back of you, and then you could grab it, and then and then so that was, you know, learning how to really.
And presumably you have a very lightweight bow. I mean, if that arrow's coming back, it's not going to hurt you or anything.
Not really. I think at the time I was shooting a 45-pound bow.
Really? Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, it when you launch it, it goes out fast.
Sure.
And it whips around very fast.
Right.
But that's where you learn how to do the correct release. And then, you know, my teacher would be standing there and he'd be correcting me on this and that. No, you need to do this. No, don't do that, and etc. And then I'd be doing that for a few weeks.
Right.
And then finally they say, okay, you're ready to launch a real arrow.
Wow.
And then at that point, you know, then you're taught all of the things that go along with that, because there is some ceremony to it, not like you'd get in some other countries like Japan or something like that.
Okay.
But there are some courtesies and such that must be adhered to.
Such as what? Give us a couple of examples.
Well, for instance, one thing is, of course, you have to know how to stand correctly. Your stance has to be just right.
Right.
But then, before shooting your first arrow of the day, you have to bow towards the target, and you have to greet the target. And in Korean, we say "Hwal beumnida," which means I am learning the bow.
Right.
And then all of the other archers around you would say "Mani machuseo," which means have many hits. And you only do that once a day. That's at the very, very beginning before you shoot your first arrow. Yeah. And I mean, you bow to the target when you say this and everything like that.
Right.
And you know, even if you're alone, you still do it.
Right. Okay.
You just don't get the replies back.
Yeah.
And you know, and of course had to learn, you know, how. Then you have to learn how things go in the orders and such like that. And then you launch your arrow, and then of course your first arrows are going to be pretty bad.
What distance are you shooting in the beginning?
145 meters.
Really? Oh wow! Oh my gosh.
Well, you know, all of that training with form and everything is all to get you ready to shoot the actual distance. Nobody starts on the bunny hill. You know, it's you're going for the main target. But however, generally speaking, nobody is really ready for it. And so when you shoot that first arrow, you're afraid of, oh gee, I'm going to shoot over it or something, and so you tend to kind of
adjust.
Yeah, and you're not. You really shouldn't. You should really trust your muscle memory from your training.
Right.
But then after a while, you start getting used to it, and then you get up to a point where you make your first hit. Now, in Korean archery, you can hit the target anywhere on the target, and it's 1 point.
Okay.
You have 5 arrows, and if you hit the target without going past the plane of the target, that's a point. It could be anywhere on the target.
Okay.
Now the target it's 2 meters wide and 2.7 meters high, tilted back 15 degrees. That's the target.
I see.
And when you make your first hit, that's actually a very big thing in the club.
Right. Yeah.
You have to buy drinks for everybody.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. The next time you come back to the club, you better have cases of beer and other things with you.
Good.
And then of course you know you have your next level is you hit 2 arrows out of 5, 3 arrows out of 5, 4 arrows out of 5, and then finally you get the ultimate, which is a perfect score. You hit 5 out of 5 times.
Yeah, that is good. Yeah.
Very difficult to do. And once you do that, you are considered a veteran archer.
Really? Right.
And the club most clubs, I shouldn't say every club, not every club does it the same way, but many clubs will throw you a party.
Oh, wow. Nice.
My club did for me. In Western money, it probably cost them about $1,000.
Wow. So it's a big deal.
Oh yeah, it is. It's a very big deal. But then again, Koreans love to party, so that's really okay.
An excuse. Okay.
And you get your license, shall we say? It's a big paper, and they read it out at your ceremony and everything.
Right.
You know, that you accomplished this in this many days, and blah blah blah.
Yeah. And
you are also given your pen name.
Your what?
Your archery nickname. In Korean.
Nickname. Okay.
Yeah, in Korean, it's called a muho. Muho means your martial name.
I see. Right.
Mine in Korean is Chungho. Chungho means blue lake.
Blue lake. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, if you look on, that's how some people, you know, they find me. I sometimes use blue lake.
I see. And who gives you that name? Your teacher, your master?
Well, Actually, mine was given to me by the director of our club. And because, I come from Michigan, which is the Great Lakes state.
The land of lakes, yeah.
Yes, so he thought, well, Blue Lake was a good name.
That's nice. Yeah. So if you get this perfect score just once, like in your whole career, are you still considered a veteran, or you're expected to repeat that at least, a couple more times or something?
Well, all right. It's fun. Well, fun that you should ask that. Now, when you hit it 5 times, in Korean, that's called a molgi. A molgi means a perfect score of 5 out of 5.
Right.
And then people are happy for you. You skated by. You got that official.
Yeah.
But until you get another one, people will always kind of look at you kind of out of the side of their eyes. About, did he just luck out?
Yeah.
So
Fluke.
when you get your second one, that's called a hwakin molgi. Hwakin means to make certain.
Right. Confirmation. Yeah.
Yeah, but the confirmation molgi.
Okay.
And so, and you know what? If you're practicing enough and you get the basics down and such, you're gonna keep on probably every once in a while getting moldies. I did. It got to be a regular thing.
Wow.
People are always happy whenever you do it. Even the masters, when the masters do it, we're still happy.
Yeah, yeah.
With them, it happens a lot more often, but we're still happy because we're glad that they're doing what they've been teaching us to do.
Absolutely, yeah. But at that distance, do you only know if they got the 5 out of 5 when you go to collect, or is there another way that you can tell? Because 145 meters is quite far to maybe hear if it hit or anything, or see.
Well, there are a couple of different ways that works. If you're by yourself, sometimes it's just you're listening for the report, because when it hits the target, it usually makes a pretty good thud.
Yes, right.
The faces of the target are usually made out of conveyor belt, rubber conveyor belting, so they hit and they bounce. Okay. And so you can also see when your arrow has kind of bounced. That's one way, and you can hear the report. Many targets have built into them transducers. Oh. And so when you hit, you get them. If you have the amplifier turned on at the club, you'll get a report back at the club, a musical report generally.
Oh, I see. Okay, interesting.
Sometimes it plays a tune. And then during competitions, and also some practices, there's actually a target judge who will be down at the target with a flag.
Right.
So if it hits the target, they'll spin the flag around. Or if you miss, they quite often will put the flag in the direction it missed. If it went over the target, they'll put it up. Went off the side, they'll put it out.
Right.
If it fell short, they'll put it down like that.
I see. Okay.
So there it kind of depends. Different times, different ways of doing it.
Sure. Who is the youngest person you've seen get 5 out of 5?
My son.
Wow. How old was he?
At that time, 12.
Really? Wow. And what poundage bow was he using?
What was he using at that time? Probably about a 40-pound maybe.
Excellent. Something. Wow.
Yeah, he was about 12 or 13.
So you could even be a teenage veteran then.
Well, yes and no. You cannot be a full-fledged member until you're at least 18.
Okay.
So to get full-fledged membership 18. But my son was in Korean they called him a junhaewan, which means he was preparing to be a member. Right. And with them it was he very often went to the club with me. And I did not teach him. He was taught by other master archers.
Right.
And actually, he became very good.
Right.
He passed me.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, I'll show you something. Since we're doing.
Sure.
When you reach your first level in Korean traditional archery, it's a dan level, just like you might have in Taekwondo.
Right.
You know, your first dan, second dan, third dan. Like that.
All right.
Korean archery is the same way. We have first through ninth dan.
Yeah.
And so the first dan, the entry level, my son, he went to a dan level competition and got it.
Wow.
And when you get that, you also get your bowl bag.
Yes.
It's called a gundae in Korean. And so the rows of Sharon denotes how many dan. And this was my son's original bowl bag that he got.
Wow.
And then on the other side, it had his name here in Korean, Lee Johan, and the Kyungju Horimjang was our club right over here.
Okay.
So yeah, this was his original bowl bag that he got. He, you know, the funny thing is, people ask me, they ask me, what dan are you?
Yeah.
I have dan level. I'm not interested in it.
Right.
I've had many friends, you know, who've gone on to even become higher dan level people, but I was never really in it
for that.
For that.
Yeah.
I was really happy for my son. I thought fantastic.
Sure.
But
wasn't your thing?
Not so much. But my son, he was just a very young teenager at most by the time he got his first mulgi.
Yeah. So he just got into it at the right time, and he had youth on his side, I guess.
Well, and he has a knack for things, especially anything that has a string. He has a knack. That's why he's a very excellent guitarist and bassist now.
Music. All right, I was going to say he's probably a good musician as well.
He is. Matter of fact, look him up on YouTube. You can find him there. He's actually played with some of the great bands and such here in Korea.
Wow. Okay.
But anyway, that's a whole other story.
that's for another interview.
That's for another interview.
Is your son still shooting? Is he still an avid archer, or is it taking a back seat? Or
well, he's busy like me. He's actually also a PhD professor now.
Oh wow. Okay.
At a university up in Seoul. He lives a distance from me. But and he has his bows and arrows up there. But just like me, not as much time as we used to have.
Yeah, sure.
But once in a while, when he does come and we do shoot, he still can run circles around me.
How many rounds do you normally do in a normal practice session? Say, for example, do you always have 5 arrows in your quiver, and that is considered one end or one round?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an end.
Okay.
And then depending on how many people are there, you'll go down the line and everybody finishes out, and then you'll take a little bit of a break. And people will probably put 5 to 9 ends in a day.
Okay. Right.
Like
do they shoot at the same time, or is it each person takes a turn, because you have to listen to see if the arrow hit, and then the next person takes a turn? How does it work?
It's one at a time.
Right.
Yeah. So you have however many people are shooting, usually a maximum of no more than about 7 in a line. So 1 to 7 people generally shooting, and you go one at a time. And
each person shoots all 5 arrows, and then they're done.
No, one at a time. One arrow at a time.
Okay, right. And then it goes back round to the beginning, one at a time, like that. Yeah.
It goes back, starts up, and
okay.
Yeah. So as a matter of fact, if you have somebody who is keeping score, they'll even note when the last person has done that. So they'll say, you know, all right, that's the end of the first arrow. Now,
Right.
first archer, second arrow. You know,
I
and
see.
then
Yeah. Okay, interesting. It's very different to the Western style where everyone you just start kind of, you know, emptying your quivers at the same time. There, it's a little bit more, I guess, maybe organized or ritualized in a way. And you're giving each person their own time and respect to shoot that arrow, and then it moves on to the next one, and everyone is looking at that person, right?
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, there could be a lot of pressure on you.
For sure. The ceremony that you mentioned when you get your perfect shot, it reminds me of the you know, in the Ottoman history where they would erect these marble pillars for people that got distance records or things like that, and on there it would say the person's name and the date, you know, the poundage they shot, even the weather conditions and things like that, and it would all be done in poetry and written by hand. So that was a way of, you know, remembering that particular
right
achievement, which is
memorializing.
Yeah, exactly, memorializing that, exactly. Thomas, let's have a look at some of the stuff you've got back there.
Sure. What would you like to see?
Let's see the bunch of arrows you got first and take us through all the differences.
Well, I have a whole stack of them here.
Right.
And you can even see all the different types.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, these arrows were made by Korea's most famous Fletcher.
Wow.
Yu Youngi was his name. His son, Yu Se-hun, has taken over for him.
Okay, good.
And he's really just as talented as his father was and such. But
excellent.
But his father really got a lot of fame because he made reproduction historical arrows.
Right.
And I was able to get some of them.
Excellent.
I was very, very lucky. I mean, there are many different things. Some of them are, you know, really kind of interesting ones, like, for instance, a fire arrow.
Wow. So you'd set that alight and then shoot it off.
Yeah. It's not it wasn't really necessarily a fuse, but at least a wick.
Yeah.
But then when it got down here, you know, you had your material that had
soaked,
had beeswax and pine pitch and such. And actually, the inner part of that, I guess, actually had black powder in later years.
Oh, right. So it would explode.
Give it a little extra punch at the end.
Wow, amazing. I've never seen one of those, but that's amazing.
Yeah, so fire arrow, I think that was kind of an interesting one.
Definitely. Are all of the arrows in Korea predominantly made of bamboo, the shaft, or do they use other woods?
Yeah, most arrows in Korea are made out of bamboo.
Okay,
most.
Right.
Here you have a couple of whistling arrows.
Wow, amazing.
This one was made out of horn.
Awesome.
And this one here is brass.
Yeah, and they each have broadheads on there.
Yep. Yeah, actually try.
Yes. So I mean, you know, a broadhead is either like for hunting or doing damage, but a whistling arrow I thought was, and please correct me, is it for maybe notifying, for example, the troops that, you know, the enemy is such and such a distance away, or at least alerting them to something? Is that what it was for, or were there other uses?
They were used a lot for signaling.
Right.
Yeah, used a lot for signaling. But there are some records that show that they did use these actually in hunting. There are actually some wall paintings that have matter of fact, horseback archers shooting whistling arrows, and like there's a deer in the distance and a tiger in the distance.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
So yeah,
I would have thought the whistling sound would have scared the animal away, but
well, I guess it was supposed to distract them.
Okay. Oh right, yeah. Sometimes when they hear a noise, they sometimes stop, don't they?
Yeah. So I mean, there are other kinds. You know, there's a blunt.
Wow.
You know, you had some other ones here. I'm just kind of looking to see all the. There are some. almost looks like a judo point.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that looks savage.
They're all kinds of other
Wow.
other specialty points
My
here and
gosh.
such.
Yeah.
So there are quite a few different.
Can we look at some of the other end on where the fletchers are and just see?
Sure.
You said he was famed for his fletching, so I mean, he
was a fletcher, so an arrow maker.
Yeah, but he probably had a high standard of finishing the arrows and binding and everything.
All Korean fletchers are, they're very meticulous when it comes to, like, for instance, let me see here. Where is it? And things going all over the place here. This is a standard Korean target bamboo arrow.
Okay. Right.
And here you can see the pheasant fletching.
Yes.
Low profile pheasant fletching.
Very low profile. Yep.
And this was made by a very good friend of mine, who's one of the few fletchers, one of the few traditional fletchers in Korea.
Wow.
And they're very meticulous at what they do. And then, now the points, of course, are machine brass now.
Sure. Yeah.
But yep,
beautiful.
Really nice bamboo.
How do they do the straightening of the bamboo with the nodes and everything? What is there's some heat process involved? I know you mentioned one of the videos that you did showed the arrow maker, and he's sitting over like a heat stove and he's punching holes in it and things like that. Just explain a little bit how they straighten out bamboo.
Well, first you have the right bamboo, and the bamboo that they use for these arrows comes from the northeastern part of South Korea. They specifically come from there because the northeastern part, during the winter time especially, it's cold.
Right.
And also being just off the sea, you have the sea breezes, which keep the bamboo straight. Because the bamboo's working against the wind coming off.
Okay, so as it's growing, it's pushing against the wind and it's keeping straight. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and because it's cold, the bamboo grows very slowly, so it's a lot stronger.
Because bamboo is known for growing quickly, right?
Yeah, I mean, being bamboo, it grows quickly, but it grows slower than the same genus of bamboo that you might find in another part of the country.
Got you, right?
Yeah, because this particular type is called Sasa Koreana. Is the type of bamboo. You know, you have the the pseudo Sasa japonica, you know, which is very common for arrows outside of Korea, especially Japan.
Japan, right?
But this is a kind of a related type of bamboo, which is the Sasa Koreana. It's very native to Korea. And so anyway, you have where you can even see where he had punched each node and such like that.
So so he's punching each node. Why?
To let the pressure out.
Right. Okay.
Because if he kept doing this over the heat, it would explode.
Yes, of course. Okay, so he punches it through, but then he leaves a hole. Does he fill that hole in, or? No.
For one thing, the needle that he uses to punch it is very small hole.
Okay,
it's
right.
It's not very much at all, and he knows exactly where to put it
to punch, right?
Yeah, and it's just to let the pressure out. But yeah, he'll be putting this thing through the heat and such, and then he has a straightening tool that he'll be doing this. Then you know, looking down like this, he'll be giving it a spin test on his fingers.
Right. Yeah.
And like that. And when he's done, it's perfect.
Wow. So the heat is to make it pliable. He has the straightening tool. He's straightening it. He's using his hands, obviously, through his experience, his eye, and his touch. And then when he's satisfied, then it's pretty much straight.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. So he'll have all of these shafts, just plain shafts that he's straightened, and then after they've all been straightened, then he'll go through the measuring process. He'll be lining up nodes and such.
Yes. So the spacing. This is something that I was speaking to Yap about. Obviously, they're growing bamboo out there, and he uses bamboo for the Yumi. The spacing of the nodes gives the shaft a particular characteristic, and then also, how would they go about spining the arrows and knowing which arrows are stiff or weak or correct for this particular poundage?
Okay, well, in Korean archery, arrows they don't really think of spine like we do in the West.
Right.
You know, where we'll put this thing on a spine meter and see how much it flexes.
Yeah.
That. What they go by is actually length and weight. Now, length and weight, if you think about it, you know, logically, length and weight will equal spine.
Exactly, right.
And so because in Korean traditional archery, we're not really as concerned about spine as what you are in the West, because in the West, you're shooting at much shorter ranges. And so archer's paradox, you know, takes on a whole new meaning at a very short distance.
Yes.
But when you're shooting at a much longer distance, it's worked its way out pretty much by the time it gets.
Right. Yes. Okay.
So you know, it'll start out like any other, you know, kind of
fishtailing and whatever. Yeah.
But by the time it gets there, it's like this. But however, what the Fletchers will do is they'll take a look at who the archer is. They'll look at somebody's build and everything like that. They take your measure too, actually.
Yeah.
All right. What bow are you shooting? You know, so they're looking at the draw weight of the bow, and they know in their mind, okay, for this bow, you're going to need to have this length of arrow that weighs this much.
Right. Wow.
And then, like for instance, the length we go by what's called chi. And so, like for instance, my arrows tended to be like 7 chi.
Okay.
Which that was the length. And also the weight, they would go by dong. And my arrows generally weighed about 7 dong. So I'd have a chil chi, chil dong. So 7 chi, 7 dong
arrow.
Okay. But then again, somebody else might have a 6-6 arrow because they probably have a lighter draw weight bow. Some people might go up to an 8-8.
Will it always be the same number? Could you not have a 6-7, for example, or something like that?
Yes, you can. And sometimes, like for instance, there was a time I was shooting 7.5 chi 7 dong, so a little bit longer but the same weight.
Right. And
the reason is because the bow I was using, I was drawing back a little bit more.
I see. Right.
So I had to have a arrow that was a little bit longer, but still the same weight for that.
Yeah.
bow.
So really, you need to get when you do start shooting, to ultimately shooting at the target. Do you need to get an arrow, a Fletcher, to make a set of arrows for you?
Oh yeah, and they will. Now you do have a choice nowadays. Didn't used to. When I first started in Korean traditional archery, bamboo arrows were really all you could get.
Right.
And they're not cheap. When the day comes that you break one, you have tears in your eyes.
Oh wow.
Really
yeah.
Right. But nowadays, you know, it's
probably like an Olympian breaking one of their carbon ones. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, this is a Korean carbon arrow.
Yes. Right.
And a lot cheaper.
Yes.
These cost only about a third the price of one of these.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, these.
Is that because, is it the price difference? Is that because of the man hours that have gone into it, or just the materials?
To make one of these arrows takes about a week to 2 weeks.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. So.
Wow.
And the Fletchers are not rich people. I mean, that's a lot of work. I mean, of course, just like bowyers, they're doing many at the same time.
Yeah, of course.
But they have to go through all of these processes that take a couple of weeks to do.
Unbelievable.
So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into one.
That's interesting. Let's get back to a couple of these other questions. Okay, so in are there different disciplines in Korean archery? So, for example, if we talk about Ottoman archery, they have flight archery. They'll have accuracy, moving targets and things like that. Would they have the same in Korean archery? Also, horseback archery as well.
Well, in centuries gone by, as I said to you, archery was a military activity here in Korea.
Yep.
And back then, there were some types of training that were related to like different distances.
Yeah.
It was especially developed during what was known as Korea's Imjin War, which was the war that Korea had with Japan from 1592 to 1598. Right. That was, the Koreans call that the Imjin War.
Okay. And
at the beginning of the Imjin War, now Korea at that time only had bows and arrows. That was the personal projectile weapon of the Korean troops.
Okay.
Japan brought firearms. They brought matchlocks.
Right.
And however, both matchlocks and bows had their good points and their bad points. So now the good point about the Korean arrows, bows and arrows, was that one, the Korean archer could fire, if you want to say fire, I'd say launch, loose.
Yes.
Arrows very quickly. Right. And they could do it at long distances. Whereas the Japanese musketeer could maybe get off a couple shots a minute at best.
Yeah. So this really was a war of this was a war of tradition v, I guess, modern equipment. You have the guns against the bows and arrows.
Yeah, and well, however, the matchlock muskets, they did have their shortcomings. Their range was less than the bow and arrow.
Right.
But they did have one positive point was the musketeer could hide behind things and could shoot at the enemy, whereas the archer had to come out, in full view.
Yeah.
To be able to launch his arrows.
Yeah.
Which, was a problem. But anyway, at first in the war, the Koreans were shooting at long distances and they were shooting volleys of arrows. But then as the war wore on, arrows started becoming very scarce.
Yeah.
They were using too many arrows and they couldn't make arrows enough. And so little by little, the Korean archers had to be taking shots at shorter distances to make sure. As a matter of fact, it got to a point where Koreans were ordered it was to the effect of 1 arrow, 1 kill. So.
Oh, right. Okay.
So
I'm just showing a screen here, just a little short video I found on YouTube about the Imjin War, just showing some images of the Japanese coming in with their military warfare and their guns.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, sorry, continue. So one arrow, 1 kill.
Yeah. And so it really kind of got to the point where it was, in English we'd say, don't shoot until you see the whites of their eyes.
Right. So they're quite close.
and it eventually got to be to that point because arrows were so scarce. And so Koreans were learning how to shoot arrows at different distances with accuracy.
Right.
They were used to shooting at very far distances, but they then had to learn how to shoot at shorter distances. And
it's not as if the enemy's shooting arrows to you, so you could use those arrows and shoot back. I mean, once you've shot your arrows, they're gone.
Yeah. Now, of course, I mean, the Japanese did have their Yumi bows and such, which, but I don't believe they were as plentiful as they weren't quite as plentiful as the matchlocks were. And the matchlocks, that was the thing that was mostly used by the Japanese side. The Koreans were slow to bring in firearms. They finally did, and it got to be that in the 17th century, Korea actually became very adept at using matchlock musket. But until then, it was the bow and arrow.
Yeah. Interesting. So, what were we saying now? Sorry, I was getting caught up with this video. Yeah. So they had. We were talking about different disciplines. So I guess, in that part of the world between Korea and I guess the steppe area of Eastern Europe, all the way through to Far East, many different cultures would have their own period of taking over the land and influencing the culture at that time. And there's a big mix of maybe Chinese and Mongolian archery and things like that. Did the Korean archery ever get influenced by any external civilizations or cultures at any time, or has it been quite a pure line of Korean archery?
Well, Korean traditional archery, although having, centuries, and we talk about even having many millennia of history, actually descended from other archery cultures around Northeast Asia. So like a few millennia ago, the Korean Peninsula, there was a time when the Korean Peninsula really had nobody. Right. It was just a landmass, and you had tribes that were they were nomadic tribes that came in, and then they went out. They were following their food sources and what have you. There were no borders or anything like we think about today. And so the Korean Peninsula was for a long time, millennia ago, was just it was just part of the path of the nomadic travelers.
Sure.
But eventually, you had people who started putting down roots in the northern part of the peninsula. The southern part still had really nobody at all. I mean, the southern part of the peninsula, what I live in now, was empty, really.
Wow, really. Right.
But you did have tribes that little by little started setting up shop, shall we say, in the northern part of the peninsula. And, since they were from tribes from all over, they were bringing with them, their cultures, which included, their archery cultures. Probably a lot of this came from the area of what we think of as Mongolia. And so you had a lot of archery culture comes from that. And when you look at the bows and such, from that time. Okay. You know that
if you need to get the door, you can do that. No problem.
No, I'm not going to. I purposely ignore.
Okay.
I have no idea what it's about. I probably should know.
A delivery, perhaps.
Huh?
A delivery, perhaps.
It could be. But I have no idea. I'm not. I told my wife that don't bother me for a while,
right?
And it means that she should not. Just a second.
No problem.
I hope you edit some of the stuff out.
I'm going to just pause the recording for us.
All right. Now we got to remember where we're at.
That's right. So we were just talking about the different tribes that were setting up shop in southern part of Korea. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, they had their eventually, all of these tribes kind of coalesced, and then over millennia and centuries and what have you, the Korea eventually developed its own archery culture, or at least a archery culture that we consider to be Korean. But the funny thing is that when you look around the world, you can see so many things out of the Korean archery culture that are very similar or even the same in some far flung. Like, for instance, some of the tools that are used for bow making in Korea are the exact same tools they use in Turkey.
Yeah.
Just as
and the question comes about then, did at one time those people, were they joined and did they know that knowledge and then they separated, or is it just through kind of, as they say, necessity is the mother of invention, where a bow maker over here and a bow maker in this part of the world, they just through trial and error and just thinking and reflection think, okay, I'm going to make this tool or this tool, and it just becomes the same. I don't know.
But the thing is that what the tools look like are almost identical. There's really no way.
It's not really a coincidence, is it?
No, it can't be a coincidence. And here's another interesting thing, and I hope my son forgives me for saying this, but and this has to do with DNA. My son, his mother's Korean and such, and he and I both did those DNA tests and everything.
Okay, lineage tests, yeah.
And anyway, one thing is that with his DNA, there's also another thing where you can have it where they compare it to historical samples.
Ah, okay.
And my son's, it's really fascinating because I'm looking at his. It shows relationships with Turkish,
wow,
Scythians,
wow.
Actually, one of the funny things is that modern populations, it shows he would be closest related to the Uyghurs, which is
really
kind of
gosh.
And so it's really kind of interesting when I'm looking now. I looked at mine and I go to the Asian section, blank, nothing at all. But I do have some Scythian though, so there's that.
Okay, all right.
But anyway, I think that this kind of lends itself a bit also just to show that there's relationships there. There are actual blood relationships between Koreans and even all the way over to Turkey.
Yeah.
During the Korean War, the Baltic countries, Mediterranean Baltic countries, they sent troops and such here.
Yeah.
To Korea.
Right.
And Turkey and Greece were two countries that did. And the Koreans especially felt very, very close to the Turkish soldiers.
Really?
And you would even hear Koreans say, they just felt this kinship. They didn't know why. They just felt that kind of a kinship. And even in recent years, when a lot of the Turkish traditional archers would come to Korea for some of our archery festivals here, the Koreans just migrated to them. The Korean archers just felt like, oh, yeah, this is truly my brother here.
Right.
So I think there is a lot of relationship.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just you can just kind of sense it, kind of
feel it. Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. Yeah. Okay, let's take a look at some of your thumb rings.
Sure. Just a second.
See what you got and see how they work.
All right. Well,
we saw some interesting ones from Justin Ma and from B. Dwyer. He has some like Persian ones and Turkish Ottoman ones and things like that. But I know the Korean ones are also quite interesting.
Well, now this one here, this one here is wood.
Right.
This is my favorite one actually.
It has a little notch in there.
Well, yeah, kind of. It's a ledge, maybe kind of.
Right.
But
okay.
But and if you can look at it, has a place so your thumb skin can feel
sit in
easy.
there. Okay, right. I see. Yeah.
This one was made out of a date tree.
Lovely.
And it was made by it was made by one of the members of my former club, my first club, and
looks quite hefty, quite hefty, quite big, huh?
Quite heavy,
yeah.
But you know, I just really kind of I've always kind of liked it and such. So that's really my personal one. I use a lot.
Okay.
And then.
Are there also would let's say a bow maker or an arrow maker, would they also know how to make thumb rings?
They can. As a matter of fact, most anybody can. And as a matter of fact, in my old club, we had one member in that club, Mr. Lee, I remember, and it was his hobby, was making thumb.
Really?
And he used to make thumb rings for everybody in the club. He would go around, you know, and you know, a member's just kind of sitting. Suddenly, that member's hand goes over here, and he's measuring you.
Wow, measuring, right?
And then he spends a whole bunch of time making a ring, and he made them out of pool balls.
Oh, lovely, nice and solid.
So pool balls, he cut them into thirds, and each third would be a thumb ring.
Interesting.
And he did a fantastic job. Matter of fact, my first real thumb ring he made for me. I still have it somewhere. I don't know where it is, to be honest with you. And I doubt it would ever fit me.
We all need a Mr. Lee in our clubs.
We do. But you know, the funny thing was about him, I was kind of joking with him half. I said, you know, gee, you know, you should make a whole bunch of these. You could really sell them. And he looked at me, he says nobody would be able to afford them.
Oh, wow.
Because how much work he put into them.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
He said nobody could afford them, so I'll just give them away.
Oh, man.
And he did. I mean, he made a couple of them for my son, which I think my son probably has. And then there are these that are made out of water buffalo horn.
Lovely. Now this particular shape looks very similar to the Turkish Ottoman ones. I mean, is this a Korean shape, or I mean, where do you think this kind of originated from?
It's a very typical shape that you'll find in many archery cultures.
Okay, it doesn't belong to one.
No.
Okay.
And this in Korean we call this an amgakji. Just gakji means thumb ring.
Okay.
And the am means female.
Right.
So this is the female thumb ring. I mean, you can use your imagination. But I usually say teardrop shape.
Okay. Right.
And there's also another one that's called the sugakji. Now I have a sugakji somewhere, but I couldn't find it. I was looking all over for it.
Okay, no worries.
But the sugakji, it is another one that you'll see very often used, and it's the male thumb ring. Su, in Korean, sukut means male of some animal species.
I see.
So the sugakji is the male thumb ring, and it is different shape than this. It has a hole, but it also has just a little knob.
I see.
And you can use your imagination for that. Why my male, why female? And both of these are shot in a little different way. Because here with the amgakji, and here, let me just, so you have your strung bow. In this case, I'll just use this laminated bow. So with this one, you know, you put your string between your thumb and your ring,
right?
And then you're going to wrap your index finger around the just around
tip of the thumb,
like
tip
that.
of the nail. Okay, right.
Yeah, and
so not fully over the nail. It's just over the tip.
As I say to people, it's like you're going to flip a coin.
Ah, yes, excellent. Right, got you. Yeah.
And then here, let me. let me find other things here. And then, of course, you know, you're going to find out, you're going to have, and I'm doing this thing completely differently here a little bit.
Okay,
but
right.
But however, you're going to have have the arrow. It's going to rest right above the ring.
Okay.
And your index finger is pushing the arrow up
into the bow. Yeah.
And then you'll give it a little bit of a twist.
Okay.
And then when you do that, now let me. And of course, I don't have this thing served correctly, so.
Okay, right, yeah, and it can move.
So the arrow kind of
around, yeah.
too much because the knock is meant for a thicker.
Quite wide. Okay.
But anyway, when you do this, you know, you can even cant upside down, and that arrow is not going in. So that's with the sugakji. Now the amgakji, which, as I said, I don't have with me right now, but what it will be doing is you have the knob, which you're putting the knob goes kind of right across here, and your index finger goes over the knob. Kind of looks like your motorcycle handle.
I see. Right.
A very miniature motorcycle handle. And then you're drawing back on that knob.
Okay.
So it's
interesting.
It's a whole different way of drawing. Now, when I first started into Korean traditional archery, I would say 90% of the people shot with amgakji. Right. Sugakji, maybe about 10% of the people shot.
Yeah.
Sugakji are especially good for heavier bows. If you have a very heavyweight draw bow, I think heavy draw weight bow.
Yeah.
But nowadays, more and more people, for some reason, are shooting with the sugakji, the male thumb ring. So you see a lot more of it. A lot more than you used to. But in Korean traditional archery, we have those two different types, and then now, as I was saying, you know, this is water buffalo horn.
Okay.
Here in Korea, we do not have water buffalo. So the horn thumb rings that you usually find in Korea are cow horn.
Right.
And however, they tend to be a thinner walled ring. I really don't care for them, to be honest. I had one. It was one of my first thumb rings was one made out of cow horn.
Yeah.
But here's one. It has pearl inlay.
Oh, lovely.
Here's one that has a golden horn color.
Wow.
And so anyway, these are ones that I had made from a fellow in the Philippines.
Right.
And sadly he passed away a few years ago.
Okay.
But he used to make thumb rings for me. And I used to sell tons of them. People just loved these, and it all started. I sent him a Korean thumb ring.
Yeah.
He copied it. He was like a copying machine.
Wow. Right.
And he would do different sizes and everything, you know. So I told him what size I needed for the holes, and then he had his people do all of that.
Yeah.
But as I said, sadly he passed away. So it's just what I happen to have left is what I have left.
Right. Sure.
But anyway, people will make thumb rings out of most anything. As I said, you know, wood, plastic, you know, like from the pool balls, other kinds of plastic. The horn, different kinds of horn, metal. One person who you probably heard about, probably Yop, and maybe even if you talk with Lucas or something like that, one person you probably heard about was Dr. Burt Grayson.
Yes. Is he the author of the book?
Well, he's written books, yeah.
Okay.
Burt, he truly is a traditional archery legend. And I'm really happy to have known him and even considered him a friend, before he passed away several years ago. But Burt, he had me get him many different things from Korea.
Right.
He had things that from times when he had visited Korea decades ago and such. But he asked, "Oh, could you get me this and that?" And so, because he put together his collection for the University of Missouri at Columbia.
Right.
And the Grayson.
Yeah, Grayson. He probably had like a mini museum.
Oh yeah, truly. And actually, so many of the things there are things that I got for him. But one thing he had me get for him, and it was the doggonest thing, a solid gold thumb ring.
Wow, no way.
Yeah, and it was heavy.
How did you get that?
It wasn't cheap. But I did. I commissioned it here in Korea.
Wow.
For him, and I got it for him. And so I'm pretty sure that's in his collection at the University of Missouri.
I hope it hasn't disappeared somewhere.
Yeah, hopefully not. that was one thing that he had me get. So you can have them made out of really just about
anything. Yeah, absolutely. So Korea is, modern day now, it's a very strong country, especially in the Olympics. I don't think there's an Olympic Games that goes by where Korea is not on the podium and taking medals. So they have a very strong Olympic team, male and female, A team, B team. And I was speaking to a couple of other coaches, and we're talking about why Korea is such a dominant force in the Olympic landscape. And a lot of them were saying that although Korea doesn't have a massive pool of archers, their quality is very high. And even if archers don't make the A team or the B team, a lot of them will go into teaching archery in schools. And so kids that come up through the school system are learning archery from a young age, what we'd say in England, primary and then secondary, and then they're coming through to college. By the time they're at college and they've been doing archery for, I don't know, say 8 to 10 years, they're already a very highly refined standard. Do you think this is due to the historical way that archery was taught in Korea, like you've mentioned already before about even the way that you were taught? They very focus very much on technique, getting your alignment correct, not shooting an arrow for some weeks, for example. Do you think there is some that has enabled them to extend that dominance into the modern archery Olympic field?
Well, you see, now Korean Olympic archery actually was an offshoot of Korean traditional archery. It was actually about 60 years ago.
Right.
And back then, because actually the first Korean Olympic archers were also traditional archers. They did both.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And for a time, both the Korean Traditional Archery Association and the Korean Olympic Archery Association, at one time they were one and the same. And but eventually, and again probably about 50 some years ago or so, they split off, and then they made their own. The traditional archery stayed, and the Olympic archery, did their own thing.
Okay.
So now, when it comes to Korea's success in Olympic archery, I believe that's really directly due to the archers. They're still using many of the Korean traditional focusing techniques.
Right.
As a matter of fact, there's a thing that was, and you used to hear this years ago. They said the Korean method.
Right.
And a lot of that just had to do about meditation and focusing one's mind and such. And a lot of that really came from the Korean traditional way of doing things, because we still use such techniques in traditional archery.
Yeah.
For focusing and such. And you were mentioning about schools and such.
Yes.
And now the thing is that only some children in Korea. Now remember when I went back and I was telling you about my start in Korean traditional archery,
Yeah.
I could not find anywhere a place to practice.
Yeah, that's right. You said
Olympic style. It just wasn't here. And I found out that was really almost by design. Because what they'll do here in Korea is they will be looking for somebody who from a young age, they can see the talent.
Yeah.
And that person, they'll kind of grab them and they'll put them in a school that does have an archery program.
Right.
There are not every school has one. I mean, certain schools do, and others don't. But
it is a national sport in Korea, right?
Yes. Well, it is probably not like what you'd find in Bhutan or something. Like Bhutan, that is number one.
That is it. Yeah.
Korea is very well known for archery because of the Olympics. But so it isn't really a national sport in the truest sense, but it's a well-respected sport here in Korea.
Sure.
I mean, when archery events, are being shown on the Olympics on television, you'll have Koreans, completely surrounding TVs to watch this, and they know what's going on. Like,
yeah.
Okay, let's see what happens here.
Yeah.
So you do have a lot of pride in the Olympic archery here in Korea, but it's not something that's really national in the Bhutans. Now, with the schools, they'll grab somebody and then they'll nurture them from a young age.
Right.
And those students, just like any pro athlete, they will be concentrating more on their sport than on their studies.
Right.
That's what is going to get them the big bucks later on in life.
Yes.
And because in Korea, if you earn a gold medal in the Olympics, you're set for life.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. In certain sports like archery and such, you'll, at least it used to be. In today's economy and what's happening now, I don't know how much it still holds, but at least used to be, you would get basically a government job.
Wow.
And all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So this is what those students would be working for.
Right.
They would practice hard every day, and they would have fine coaches who would teach them everything all the way up until their Olympic level. So anyway, yeah.
I mean that's certainly a different way. I think in the West, it's more like try to get as many people in through clubs and activities and archery sessions, and then try to filter out the people who can get to the top level. But one of the problems here is it's a bit of a circle where a person can't get to top level unless they are sponsored, but no one's going to sponsor you unless you're top level. So it's very hard. It's a catch-22. It's very hard to get to that top level because you've still got to pay your own bills and travel, etc. No one's going to sponsor you yet because they don't see that glimmer of talent in you. Whereas seemingly in Korea they would look for them at a very young age and develop them very young, which is certainly paying off.
And it seems to pay off.
100%. Oh, 100%. Okay, so one other question here. So I said here, is archery in Korea more than just a sport, or does it extend to something more, religious or spiritual, much like we find in Japan with Kyudo? Obviously, in the West, archery is a sport, and that's pretty much the end of it. But certainly in different cultures, the Islamic culture in Turkey, in the Japanese culture, Buddhism, it extends into their religious beliefs and practices. Now, you mentioned in Korea there's an element of rituals that you would do at the club and things like that. What could you say about that? And you know, is it a spiritual thing? Is it just a meditative thing, or how do the Koreans perceive it?
Here's what I say. It's not really the same way like Kyudo is in Japan. Koreans are a very practical people.
Yeah.
And I mean, although, you know, there is some ceremony in the way things are done here in Korea, at the heart of everything, there always is a practical reason.
I see.
So there might be some ceremony or something around it, but there's a practical reason. Like what I was saying, you know, like for instance, even the aspect of where we bow to the target before the first arrow, and we say, I am learning the bow.
Yes.
Now, that is meant to put into your mind that even if you are a master in archery, you are still a student. You know, so even masters are students.
Right.
And you have to have that in your mind. Nobody, because we have a lot of precepts and things in Korea. And one thing that is in a Korean precept is humility. And you never put yourself above somebody else, even if you are above somebody else.
Yeah. Even if you have that right to.
You always bring yourself down to at least the same level as everyone. And so whether somebody is a student or a master, they treat each other the same. You know, they're equals. They're all students of the bow. Now, so that's kind of a practical aspect of things. You know, now names. Now, you know, we're just using the name Kyudo, you know, which you know, is literally the way of the bow, you know, right. the Chinese characters. And it kind of brings up something here in Korea, because when I first started Korean traditional archery, we were using the term gungdo. And gungdo is the same characters as Kyudo.
I see.
And the thing was that
do they share the language, or do they share the alphabet or the language, or
no, just the Chinese characters.
Ah, I see. Okay.
Now, of course, the Korean actually has its own phonetic alphabet.
Yeah.
But historically, Korea used also Chinese characters, just like Japan used Chinese characters. But Kyudo, gungdo, those two characters, meaning the way of the bow, was actually kind of thrust upon Korea during the Japanese occupation of Korea, which was 1910 to 1945, you know, to the end of World War II. Okay. And you'll find many Korean archers take offense at that term, because it was one that was put on them by the Japanese.
Right.
I mean, many of us still use it. I still use gungdo very often I say that. As a matter of fact, you know, that's part of my email address.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, you know that.
Yeah.
But the thing is that in the last couple of decades, Koreans have been trying to get away from the term gungdo.
I see.
Now, before the Japanese, well, actually up until the point where the Japanese annexed Korea, colonized Korea in the early 20th century, Koreans called the sport gungsul. Now, gungsul was actually literally bow technique. Right. So it wasn't way of the bow, but it was the technique of the bow.
Okay.
And so some Koreans kind of kept that term. But then after the war, Koreans were going for something a little bit more Korean. So another term that you'll hear a lot is called gukgung. Gukgung literally means national bow. In other words, one national type of archery. But one thing you'll hear very often is pure Korean, halsogi. And halsogi means bow shooting.
Okay.
And so this was a way, you know, that the Koreans were trying to kind of get away from the old way of thinking about this kind of traditional archery. Now, you're asking about the spiritual aspect.
Yeah.
And again, Koreans are always kind of, as I said, practical people. And so they look at things philosophically, not necessarily spiritually, but philosophically.
Okay.
And Korean archery has many, many, many precepts. And the precepts either have to do with the way that you behave in Korean archery or the way that you shoot a bow. So it all has to do about function.
Yeah, right.
And it isn't just for some ethereal spiritual aspect. There really is something that the Koreans consider that, you know, it's just more of how they can practically relate to archery.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just sensitive of the time. I know you've been more than generous already.
Oh, I'm fine. Don't worry about me.
Okay, all right. Let's look at some of the other stuff you have. The real, I mean, everything is interesting, but let's look at the bows now.
How about these are a couple of very, very old horn bows.
Amazing.
These are probably 50, 60 years old.
Wow. Now, I mean, the distinctive, you know, every culture, every type of bow is so distinctive, but the Korean bow, it's the way that it's folded in on itself. You know, it's just distinctive of that. A bow like that, how on earth is that strong?
Well, now, of course, being a really old bow, the reason why this pulled in so much is because the sinew, which is on the back,
it's shrunk.
It didn't, and it really kind of brought in.
Yeah.
This one here is probably a little bit closer to what it would be. Matter of fact,
are these still shootable? Would you say or not?
No.
Okay,
not at all. These are only wall hangers.
I see. Right.
And here you can see the sinew and such.
Right.
Here you can see here's all of the birch bark.
Birch bark. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And,
beautiful.
And then here you have the sinew showing.
Sinew.
And then you have all the horn.
Right.
And then the sias up here, which is a mulberry. And so that's how these. Now I'll show you something else, just to give you an idea on the beginning side of things.
Yes, please.
So you keep these in your mind.
Right. Yep.
And then this here. This here is the beginnings of a horn bow. Wow. This is when they're first being made, and
okay, right, okay.
You can even see the sia and then here you have the bamboo core here, and where you have the mulberry sia, you know, fits right into right in there like that.
Right,
you can see that where the bowyer has etched he's on the inside. That is actually the reason, you know, for that is where he's going to be putting the sinew and everything, and then and then on this side, of course, where the horn is going to be going, and here here's a horn slat, couple of horn slats there.
Right.
You can kind of get
now horn is, you know, okay. Buffalo horn or water buffalo horn, it curls or whatever, but it can also be malleable and made to flex under heat. Is that right?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, what the bowyer will do is he'll soak these for a while, and then he will actually get them pliable and what have you.
Right.
And then what happens is he will put on many coats of glue. So he glue sizes them.
Right.
And over a week's period, he will have put on dozens of coats of glue. And then the glue soaks into the horn.
Ah, right.
And so it's filling up all of the pores. This horn is very porous, actually. And so it kind of fills that up. Right. And then, after that point, does that further strengthen the horn as well? Putting the glue in, or? Well, I mean, anything that you add to something else is going to do something to that level. But a lot of it is because, he'll be doing really the same to the core here.
Yeah.
Because this will also have sizing done to it. And then eventually, the horn will be applied to this, and then it's further glued on. Now, I'll show you another nice little nifty tool here. In Korean, this is called a jomakson, which probably in today's day and age, it's a little rude because it's a crippled hand.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay.
Yeah,
right.
So today we probably not a nice thing to say, but that's what they call it in this. And this is used to when you're putting the horn on.
Yes.
This has a rope, a long rope that's attached to it. And you use.
I remember it. Yeah, in the videos, right? They're binding it. Okay.
Yeah. So this binds the horn to the core, and then it stays that way while the horn and the core are setting up together.
Roughly how long would that binding stay on for? Days, weeks?
Exactly how long I'm not really sure, but at least probably several days.
Right. Okay.
And
how about the glue that they use? I mean, in some of the other with the other bow makers that we've spoken to, they use this fish bladder glue and things like that. Is it the same?
Yeah, that's what we use here. Is the fish is called in Korean mina, which is a kind of a croaker, which has a very, very large air bladder, and so the bowyers will go to certain markets to get these air bladders.
Right. And
the bowyers know exactly which ones are good quality, which ones are not. And so they'll pick and choose to find just the right ones. And then of course those air bladders get melted down. It takes a long time. I've done it before.
Right.
And boy, does that ever take a long time to melt those things down.
Are they somewhat solid at first, and then they must be heated down? Oh, right.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, I have some somewhere, but just like some of my other things, like last night I was trying to find some. I was really kind of head scratching and such. I know approximately where they are, but I couldn't find them, sadly.
No problem.
Otherwise, I would have brought it out. But yeah, they're about this big.
Right.
They're all they're really kind of shriveled up, very hard. When they're dried, they're very hard. And then you put them in a pot with water, and then you slow cook them until they melt down, and you get the glue to be whatever consistency. Now, remember when I said that they were sizing the horn and such like this.
Yes.
The bowyer starts out with very thin glue. So the glue is like, it's water thin.
Right.
And then over time, as the glue starts getting thicker, he's putting that on, and then slowly he starts putting on thicker and thicker.
I see.
Later.
Pasting it on. Yeah.
But the very thin glue gets into the pores a lot easier.
What fascinates me is how they came about that knowledge of using this fish bladder, and you cook it, and you get a glue out of it. And the fact that not only the Koreans knew that, the Turks knew it, maybe the Huns knew it, and all these different people. Again, this shared information, it's just still a mystery to me.
There's an old story which I think I don't know how true it is, but you hear Korean bowyers tell the story that because the fish, the croaker, it also is a fairly popular fish for soup.
Uh-huh.
I've had croaker soup before. It's okay.
Yeah.
But as their story goes, is that back centuries ago, even 100 years ago and before, the men in Korea had wispy beards and like this, right?
Yeah.
And as the story goes, you had Koreans who were having their soup, this croaker soup, and sometimes it kind of got into their beards.
Okay. Yeah.
And they'd be doing this. They do that with your beard possibly, so they kind of stroke it once, all right.
Right.
I used to have a beard many years ago, and I used to do that also. But the story goes, the Koreans they get the soup in their beard. They didn't realize they did, but they were stroking their beards. They were finding out their beards were getting stiff.
Oh, I see.
As the glue dried in their beards.
Okay, I understand.
And so suddenly it's like, oh, gee, I think this would make a good glue. So again, whether or not that's where it came from, who knows? Now, actually, the air bladder glue, traditionally, they even used it in furniture making here in Korea.
Interesting.
So it was a traditional glue, not just for bow making, but also.
So they probably used it on a maybe semi-industrial scale.
To a certain extent, probably.
Interesting.
So let's see. What else do I'm just trying to see if I have anything.
Yeah. What have we missed out of your?
About the only other thing was just this is what goes into making the handle of a hornbow, and this is an oak. This is the oak base. Which, and so that one, of course, would just fit down in here. Right. Excellent. And then that actually gets filed way down to almost nothing. And then the bowyer will put on whatever kind of covering over this that he wants. And the handles, Korean hornbow handles, now just shuffling things all around here. But just you can even kind of see, like in this case, you can see you can see what was put over the handle. The handle is actually right there in the middle of all of this.
Just lift it slightly. Okay.
There you are. Right. The handle is actually right in the core, and this is just stuff that was extra added on here.
Right.
The bowyer will take whatever. Nowadays, it's usually like a hard foam rubber or something like that. They'll put on there, and then they'll carve it to shape. And one thing you'll notice is that these are rather small handles. Some people are thinking like, gee, that's it disappears in my hand. It's so small. Probably this one here probably even shows that even a little bit better. Where
really tiny.
Where that just kind of disappears there. Right. But that's by design.
Right. It's deliberate.
Because you see, and one thing you'll notice is that the bottom part of the handle is wider than the top part, because because what you're going to be doing is the handle is going to fit into the palm diagonally, like that. The bottom part of the handle presses in to the heel of the palm, and then you wrap your fingers around it like this, starting with your pinky all the way your index finger.
I see.
And then you have like, now I'm doing this like a left-handed person. I'm a right-handed person, so it actually is going to be. So for me, it's actually going to be this way.
Right.
I have it in
So it's kind of ergonomical.
Well, it is, but the thing is, there's a purpose for that. And I get asked this question all the time by people.
Yeah.
Because one thing is, when you look at a Korean bow, very often you're going to notice that the bottom limb is a little bit shorter than the upper limb.
That's right.
And the brace height is even, it's a little bit lower than the upper limb. But that's all part of the design. People are kind of amazed by this. But the thing is, you're fitting this into here like this because you're putting the power into the bottom of the bow. You're pushing.
I see.
That's why you have this like this, is because you're pushing like this when you're drawing the bow back.
Yes. Right. Okay.
So there is a reason why we do that.
Because to the untrained person, someone would say that's quite a basic, raw looking, handle that doesn't seem to really make sense. But obviously, once you know what it's for, then there's a reason for that.
Yeah. Now the only other thing that I have here is a book that I published back in 2007. Yeah. This is my original book right here.
Wow. Okay.
From 13 years ago.
Wow.
And it was actually based on my my master's degree thesis. So.
Which was on Korean. That was on Korean archery. All right. Excellent. Wow.
It's nice when you can get credit for what you enjoy doing.
Absolutely.
but anyway, I then turned it into a book.
Excellent.
And since that time, I revised the book, but it's an ebook version. You can find it on Amazon.com. Okay. There are two sections of it with color photos. This one here, all black and white.
Right. Yeah.
And one thing, many people complained about that. Actually, because some of the photos, they're kind of looking. Well, as a matter of fact, we're talking about the sugachi.
Oh yes, there it is. Right. I see. I see the notch. Yeah. Right.
So yeah, I mean, I had a lot of different photos in here and stuff, but black and white, a little smaller, sometimes not quite clear for some people.
Yeah.
But it was it was something I self-published, and thousands of copies around the world. But then I decided a few years ago I made the ebook version, which has color photos.
Great.
Because on an ebook you can do a lot more than what you can do with a print book.
Sure.
So anyway, if anyone is interested in learning more,
what I'll do, I'll find the link of it on Amazon and I'll put it in the description of the video.
Yeah, and there are 2 parts.
Okay.
For the ebook.
Right. Well, you can send me that links and I'll put them.
Oh yeah, sure.
So okay, so just to wrap up, we do a couple of kind of just quick fire questions at the end and just get the archer's view on a couple of things. So laminate or composite bow, which do you prefer to shoot?
Well, I mean, of course, a laminated bow is a composite bow, but with modern materials. That not really an easy question to answer. I would say I along with probably most Korean archers today shoot laminated bows, the modern one, because they're easy to use, easy to maintain. They're less expensive.
Sure.
They're a lot more durable and rugged than the horn bows. And they still look a lot like the horn bow. They have the same feel and performance as a horn bow, or at least very close to it. So they're I think a little bit better. However, horn bows do have a little, they are special. They are.
Yeah.
And when you shoot a horn bow, you can feel the difference. There's just something about them that is it has a sweet feeling to it when you shoot.
Yeah. Other people also said actually, that when you shoot you know, a composite bow with especially with wooden arrows, it has this sweetness about it that it's not like shooting.
It's you really it's something. It's a quality. It's hard to put into words, really. But the horn bows are finicky. Most of them are. I mean, there are some that are a little easier to manage. They're a little more stable. But the Korean, but at least I can speak to the Korean horn bow, because we have very narrow limbs relative to other types of horn bows. And they can be very finicky. So
I've always thought of the Korean, you know, that particular design. I mean, as excellent as it is, it's quite temperamental. If you don't handle it correctly and things like that, you know, it can twist out of shape or the string can come off. And that's not due to the bow, that's just the archer not handling it properly. So you have to know how to handle it correctly.
Well, you see, and this is just the thing. I've had probably hundreds of people come to me over the years wanting to buy a Korean horn bow. And I asked qualifying questions to them. I said, have you ever shot a horn bow before?
No.
Do you know how to do this? No. I said, why do you want a horn bow? You know, if they are really truly desperate to get a horn bow, fine, I'll help them out. But I say, look, these things, they're not for beginners. They really aren't, because you do one thing wrong and you have an extremely expensive wall hang. And there have been people who were very desperate. They get a horn bow from me, and the first thing is they went and they broke it. And it's like, and there is no warranty on a Korean horn bow.
Right.
I mean, it's just the nature of the thing. Whereas I always try to talk the people out of that. I say, look, you know, if what you want is the look, feel, and performance of a horn bow, just get the laminated version. Really. Because in many cases, people aren't even going to notice the difference unless they get right up close and personal with it. Exactly. So it's not for a beginner. And I would strongly recommend people wait. Now later on, for instance, when you go to do a Dan test, become a master archer, which is the 5th Dan. When you get to be that level, you have to use horn bow bamboo arrows.
Right.
From that level on, it is required. You are not allowed to use laminated bow carbon arrows. Wow. It's forbidden.
Is that just for the test, or period? Whenever you shoot, you cannot use.
After that, it's kind of period.
Right.
You gotta stick. You're as a master, you're expected to act one.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Just quickly to go back to that, actually, I mean, at that top level, what type of tests are required to pass that level? Do you know?
Yeah, well, you're shooting a total of 45 arrows. So you have 9 ends of 5 arrows.
Yeah.
And the first level, like my son got, you know, the first Dan, you hit 25 out of 45.
Wow.
So 25.
Just under 50%. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And then for the next couple of times up there, it's like 2 more arrows for each level going up until you get to around, I think it's at the 5th level, 4th or 5th level. Then it goes up by, like, you know, there's a difference of I'm trying to remember what it is. It's been a long time since I've done, but in the end, to get 9th Dan,
wow,
I think that's like 39 out of 45 arrows. So you're almost a perfect. I mean, So needless to say, there are very, very, very few 9th Dan archers in Korea.
Absolutely.
There are a few. Matter of fact, I know some of them.
Wow.
but they are very, very few.
Mm.
They are rare because that is a level of shooting that is unreal. Actually, even just to get to the 4th or 5th dan level.
Yeah, that alone is difficult.
I mean, because you're up shooting 30 some arrows out of the 45.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's got to be tough. That's got to be tough.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, that's
yeah. Okay. Carbon or bamboo arrows? What do you prefer?
Again, that's a tough one because I love bamboo arrows.
Mm.
I mean, the bamboo arrow, just like the horn bow, when you shoot a bamboo arrow, it's a sweet feeling.
Sure.
Bamboo is one of the most, it's one of the most agreeable materials in existence on the earth.
Wow.
I mean, and it's very forgiving when it comes to, well, you know, you and I were talking earlier about spine and such.
Yeah.
Even though probably a bamboo arrow like I have here that I would shoot, its spine to be pretty heavy, like probably a 60, 70 pound spine, even though I'm shooting maybe a 50-pound bow. You know, so it's a pretty stiff spine, but I could shoot this thing from a 30-pound bow and it'll shoot just as sweet. I love bamboo arrows, but the kicker is they're expensive.
Right.
One arrow is about $40 today.
Wow.
Yeah, one, and you have to buy them 10 at a time, 10 to 20 at a time. Whereas you know, with the, you know, one of these, 10 to 12 bucks. So $40 or 12.
Do the maths.
Yeah. But I mean, the Korean carbons are also very nice to shoot.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's just something very, very, very special about the bamboo.
Absolutely. No, for sure.
So if money were no object,
right.
If I had as many bamboo arrows as I could shoot, I'd shoot bamboo.
Right. Excellent. Okay, last question for you, Thomas. If this is a theoretical question, just a bit of a fun question. If you were able to go back into time, into any period in history, archery period, which period kind of fascinates you the most, or would you like to live in that period?
Boy, you all give me the easy questions here, don't you? Now, here's just a little aside.
Sure.
And that's, you know, my father's family is Native American. Yeah. And of course, American Indians also had had rich archery heritage.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I'm a tribal elder back in the state.
Excellent.
Of the Odawa tribe.
Wow.
And probably, you know, I would be hard pressed to decide, gee, would I like to live amongst my paternal ancestors and their art tradition? I might be kind of drawn a little bit to that, just because it's literally in my blood.
Absolutely, yeah, that to be totally understandable.
But then again, you know, I have lived the Korean archery experience in modern times, and I've studied the historical aspects. I mean, you know, a lot of my my degrees are based in looking at these things, and so I would equally, in some ways, even enjoy it if I could maybe go back a couple centuries, maybe back to the 15th century Korea, when the bow was supreme here in the country. And you know, it was, as I said, it was the personal projectile weapon in Korea at that time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There were no personal firearms. There were cannon, but there were no muskets or anything.
Right,
So,
right.
I mean, now they had handgun type, hand tubes, but nothing like we would think of today. But the bow, everywhere. Now, one other thing I'll mention about this, and this is a question I also often get, because when people think of Korean archery, they think of a horn bow.
Correct.
But, and I've said this a lot, is that in actuality, I would say most Korean foot archers did not have horn bows.
Right.
They probably shot bamboo bows or self bows made out of wood.
Yeah.
Because just like today, to buy, use, maintain a horn bow was very expensive, even historically.
Yes.
And the government did not supply archers with their equipment. You know, any Korean soldiers were responsible for all of their own equipment and uniforms and everything.
Interesting.
I mean, with some exception, there were some things that they were supplied with, but however, a lot of this was covered by taxes that their family had to pay for their being in. So anyway, chances are these were probably more the area of the well-to-do. The powerful, well-to-do people had horn bows that they used. I mean, they were used militarily. Sure. Of course they were. But probably not by the average foot archer. Yeah. And some people they get this idea in their mind that, you know, Korea had armies of horn bow archers. And it's like, I can't imagine that. Now, it's hard, but then again, it's really kind of hard to say because, of course, horn bows from centuries ago, most of them don't exist anymore.
Right, right. And there haven't been massive architectural findings of thousands of bows or things like that, have there?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
There have just been certain bows that were preserved for very special reasons. Like, for instance, one bow that you'll see photos of all the time, usually a black and white photo, because it hasn't been seen in decades, and that is the bow and arrow set that belonged to the Yi Dynasty's first king, Iseunggae. Iseunggae, he was a general in the late 14th century in Korea, and he overthrew the last king of the Goryeo dynasty. And so Iseunggae, he founded the Yi dynasty, the Joseon dynasty, the Yi Joseon dynasty, in 1392. And he was well known as a superb archer. And so there was a museum at one time, and I think it was in North Korea actually, where his bow and arrow set were kept, and there's photos of it on internet, and matter of fact, on a lot of our Facebook archery sites and such, you know, you'll have people will be even talking about that and comparing it to other Asian bows, because it looks quite different from what we have nowadays. But anyway, that was just another aside that I just wanted to mention, that you know, some people get this romantic idea of the bow and arrow in Korea, but it probably was a lot more practical than what you think. Remember, as I said, Koreans are practical people, and you know, if you don't have money, you can't afford something, you find a way to do it. Right. And so you might be making your own bow out of bamboo slats, just stringing them together and shooting them that way.
That's it. Excellent.
Exactly.
Well, Thomas, the time has really flown. We've taken a little bit longer than I'd planned, but it's been a real honor and so interesting
glad
to speak to you. It's been great to see all of your collection of, I'm sure that's only part of the collection, but you know, the thumb rings and the bows and the arrows and
very small part.
Yes, I'm sure. But
I have so, as I said, so many things that are just stuck away somewhere, and I just couldn't get to them.
It's fine. Maybe in the future we do a part 2, and we didn't even talk about quivers and things like that. So I'm sure there's a lot more that we could cover. But I appreciate your time. Appreciate all your effort with delving into the Korean culture and the traditional archery that they have there, and the effort you put into your book, and just everything that you're doing there. So we pray that God protects your family, keeps you all safe, and hopefully we can get out of COVID in one piece and healthy and sane.
Well, thank you. Well, and the same back at you too.
Okay.
I hope that you and yours are also doing well and staying healthy and all during this time.
Thank you very much. I'm sure a lot of people will be eager to see this video. So once it's published, I'll send you the link, and hopefully it'll be of benefit to a lot of people. So thank you once again for your time.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to do so.
No problem. Thank you very much. Take care until next time.
I'll
thank you very much,
Thomas. A little later.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.